My hands were still trembling when I pushed open the gate to my parents' house that afternoon. I had spent the entire morning curling Maya's hair, helping her into the dress she had picked with such care, reminding her that this was finally her moment. She had worked 4 years for this valedictorian, the #1 student in her entire class, and my parents had offered to host a graduation party in her honor. I told myself that maybe this time would be different. Maybe they had finally learned to see her the way I did. The first thing I saw was the tent. White canvas gleaming in the June sun like a wedding had been set up on my parents' front lawn. Gold streamers twisted in the heavy air, folding chairs in neat rows, and a crowd of relatives with glasses of lemonade and champagne. I thought my breath caught because I was proud. I thought it was joy. But then I saw the cake. A 3-tiered confection in pastel frosting so extravagant it looked like it belonged in a magazine, and written across it in letters so perfect they might have been engraved, "Congratulations to our only grandson, Ethan." My knees nearly buckled. Behind me, Maya froze, clutching her small purse like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. The word only burned into me deeper than any insult. Ethan, my brother Daniel's son, was 14. He had finished 8th grade. That was what they were celebrating, not Maya. Not the girl who had sacrificed weekends and sleep and teenage freedom to stand on a stage as valedictorian. Not my daughter who had carried herself with more grace and resilience than anyone in this family. No, this party, this show, this canopy with gold streamers was for a boy who had simply moved from middle school to high school. My mother, Diane, raised her glass, her lipstick catching the sunlight, and said, "Middle school is a big milestone, especially for a young man who will carry on the family name." The guests applauded. My father, Charles, laughed and added, "Girls move on, but boys stay. Sons are forever." I felt my daughter's hand slip into mine, cold, almost trembling, and I knew if I opened my mouth, if I screamed, then I would never be able to stop. So I smiled thin and sharp and let her out. I did not cause a scene. I did not give them the satisfaction. Instead, I made a promise in silence. 3 days later, I sent a letter that made them scream instead. It had started with a phone call that seemed ordinary enough, the kind of call you want to believe is genuine when it comes from parents who have disappointed you for most of your life. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in the grocery store parking lot sliding heavy bags into the trunk when my mother's voice came through the speaker. Her tone was light sweet, even the same tone she always used when preparing to ruin my day, but dressing it in sugar. "We were thinking of throwing a graduation party," she said, "for our grandchild." Just like that, our grandchild. Not Maya's name, not a single word about the girl who had just achieved what few ever could. But my guard dropped anyway. My shoulders eased because I wanted to believe against all better judgment that maybe this time it meant Maya. I heard myself saying thank you before I had the chance to think it through. She sounded sincere, the kind of sincere that tricks your heart into opening old wounds just to see if maybe there is still tenderness hidden underneath the scars. That evening, I told Maya. We were sitting at the kitchen table, her textbooks stacked beside her because even after her last exam, she kept reviewing notes as if habits were chains. I told her Grandma and Grandpa wanted to host a party for her graduation. For a moment, her eyes actually lit up. "Really?" she asked, blinking like she was afraid she had misheard me. I nodded. She pressed her lips together, hiding a smile, but I saw it, the flicker of hope. The quiet thought that after years of showing up being helpful, being kind, being the invisible child in their eyes, maybe now they saw her. She went to her room that night humming, pulling out her best earrings, laying out dresses she might wear. She even suggested inviting her debate coach to say a few words. It was the kind of nervous excitement only teenagers carry, fragile and pure, and it twisted in me because I should have warned her. If I could have stepped outside of myself, I would have told us both not to get our hopes up. But I was tired of always being the realist. I let her dream. The next day, she asked if she should bring a small speech, something to thank everyone. She spent hours rewriting it, smoothing the folds of paper, hiding it under her pillow like it was a secret treasure. Watching her reminded me of all the little ways she had tried over the years to earn their affection. She had brought my father his glasses when he misplaced them. showed my mother how to use email, even baked cookies for family dinners. Each time she had offered herself as if love could be bartered for kindness. And each time she was met with polite thank yous and then the empty glance toward her cousin Ethan as if she were wallpaper instead of blood. This was supposed to be different. This time, I thought she would finally be seen. Daniel, my older brother, had always been the golden child. He was given everything, every opportunity, every ounce of pride. When he stumbled, my parents turned his mistakes into excuses about how boys will be boys, how men learn through failure. When I stumbled, I was told I was careless, dramatic, too sensitive. And when Maya succeeded, when she brought home trophies and certificates, they clapped politely and moved on to Ethan's piano recital, Ethan's soccer game, Ethan's straight B report card that was praised as brilliance. Still, when my parents called about the party, I chose hope. I told Maya that maybe this was the sign, maybe her persistence was not in vain. She looked at me as if I had given her something priceless. She asked if she could wear the blue dress my aunt once gave her. She even painted her nails carefully, holding her hands out to admire them. My husband Marcus tried to hide his skepticism. He raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. He wanted to protect her, but he knew I needed to believe as much as she did. In the car on the way to the party, the silence was heavy, but not tense, more like the breath you hold before opening a gift. I remember saying, "Let us just smile and say thank you no matter what." I said it like a fool. The day of the party was the kind of summer day that clung to your skin. The air was heavy, the kind of heat that presses behind your knees and makes your shirt damp before you even leave the house. Marcus could not find his good shoes. Maya changed her earrings 3 times, and I was already sweating by the time I slid into the driver's seat. As we drove closer to my parents' neighborhood, the silence grew thicker, words stuck behind our teeth. When we turned the corner onto their street, I almost did not recognize the house. At first glance, it looked less like a family gathering and more like a small-scale wedding. A large white canopy covered the front lawn. Rows of folding chairs sat in neat formation, gold tablecloths shimmered under the sun, and streamers stretched across the yard. Even those little personalized yard signs with Ethan's name had been planted into the grass. My throat tightened. They had gone all out. Marcus muttered something low, a sound of disbelief. Maya leaned forward in her seat and whispered, "Wow," as if she were impressed, still thinking all of this might be for her. We parked, stepped out, and were swallowed by the crowd. Plastic cups of lemonade were shoved into our hands. Relatives we had not seen in years swooped in with hugs and air kisses. People laughed and chatted about the heat, the traffic, the food. It took me a few minutes to realize no one was mentioning Maya. They were congratulating Daniel, clapping him on the back, telling him how proud he must be. Then I saw her. In the center of the crowd stood Ethan, curls, neatly styled a sash across his chest, a glittering outfit that caught the light. He looked like he was glowing, basking in attention. For one irrational second, I thought maybe he was excited for Maya too, that he had dressed up to honor her. But then my eyes landed on the cake. It was positioned on a decorated table, 3 tiers tall, pastel pink frosting with gold piping, a small edible graduation cap perched on top. Written across the front in looping cursive. "Congratulations to our only grandson, Ethan, class of 2025. The words blurred as I read them again and again. Only grandson. Not granddaughter. Not Maya. Ethan. Next to the cake was a framed photograph of Ethan holding his 8th grade certificate, wearing a crown like he had just won a pageant. Behind me, I felt Maya go completely still. Not a gasp, not a cry, just a kind of silence that told me something inside her had broken. I looked at Marcus. His jaw was tight, his hand on my shoulder, but he said nothing. We stepped further into the crowd like ghosts. No one noticed the shift in us. People smiled at us as if everything were normal. "You must be so proud," someone said, not even specifying who they meant. Another aunt patted Maya on the arm and asked why she was not wearing her sash. Confused glances darted our way when they realized she had no role in the celebration. I saw one cousin tilt her head and mouth, "Where is the gift?" I wanted to sink into the ground. Then Diane raised her glass. "Let us all take a moment to celebrate Ethan," she declared, her voice high and proud. "He has worked so hard, and we could not be more proud. Middle school is a huge milestone, especially for a young man. She paused and smiled at him with shining eyes. Charles chimed in, laughing. Girls come and go, but boys carry the family name. The crowd clapped and cheered. Maya stood there rigid, not crying, not moving, just watching. Her hands hung at her sides, her eyes glassy. The noise of the applause felt like waves crashing against her, and she did not even flinch. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to smash the cake, to make them choke on their own words. But I knew that if I did, they would point at me and say, "See, too dramatic, too sensitive, always overreacting." I clenched my jaw and waited. I waited until the toast ended, until people returned to their seats, until the crowd thinned near the buffet table. Then I approached Diane. She was bent over a cooler, scooping ice into cups. "The cake says only grandson," I said. She smiled, distracted, barely looking up. "Probably a mistake at the bakery." I did not move. She shrugged. "Besides, Maya is older. She is not a child anymore." This was more of a milestone for Ethan. I stared at her, my words lodged in my throat. My father strolled over with a paper plate of food and blinked at me. "Wait, did Maya graduate too?" I said nothing. From what he asked. "High school," I replied coldly. He laughed. "Oh, right, that is right." Then he turned away. My mother did not even try to correct him. She just smiled thinly and went back to the cups. That was it. That was all Maya got from them. No recognition, no pride, just dismissal. We left without a word. No one stopped us. No one even noticed us walking away, and somehow that was the sharpest cut of all. In the car, Maya pressed her forehead against the window. Marcus sat stiff beside me, his silence thick with rage he did not let out. I started the engine and said quietly, "We are not doing this again." Driving away from that party, I could not stop the memories from crashing over me. It was as if every mile between me and my parents' house peeled back the layers of my childhood, exposing all the parts I had tried so hard to bury. Daniel had always been the golden child. He was given every opportunity, every ounce of encouragement, every dollar when he needed it. When he failed a test, my parents said he was tired when he got into fights. They said boys will be boys. When he quit soccer, they said he was finding himself. When I came home with an A-, I was told I should have studied harder. When I forgot a chore, they called me careless. When I cried, they said I was dramatic. The message was always the same. His failures were forgivable. Mine were character flaws. One year, I won a citywide debate tournament. I was only 15, and I thought for once they might look at me with pride. At dinner that night, I tried to tell the story how I had stood on stage and argued my way through 3 grueling rounds. My mother smiled thinly and said, "That is nice, dear," before turning to Daniel to ask about his science fair project that had not even placed. My father laughed and told me, "Words will not build a future. Your brother will carry this family forward." I remember sitting there with my trophy in my lap, the metal cold against my palms, and realizing that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. I learned to shrink myself. I learned to apologize before anyone accused me. I learned to smooth things over, to make excuses for their sharp comments, to swallow my anger and call it maturity. That was gaslighting in its purest form. They convinced me that my pain was overreaction, that my longing for recognition was selfish, that I should be grateful just to exist quietly at their table. My mother used to tell me I was too sensitive. She would tilt her head, sigh, and say, "You take things the wrong way. Do not be so dramatic." But when Daniel sulked, when he shouted, when he stormed out of the house, they called him passionate. I see now it was never about sensitivity. It was about gender. To them, boys were allowed to be expansive, to take up space, to fail loudly. Girls were expected to be tidy, compliant, invisible. Generational conflict ran through every interaction. My father grew up in a household where sons were heirs and daughters were burdens. He repeated it like scripture. I remember once overhearing him tell a neighbor, "At least I have Daniel. Girls grow up, get married, and leave. Sons stay. Sons inherit. Sons carry the name." That was the foundation on which my childhood was built. It explained every dismissal, every slight, every absence of pride. And now it was the foundation on which Maya was being judged too. When Maya brought home straight A's, they said Ethan was athletic. When she won debate medals, they said Ethan was social. When she earned valedictorian, they said Ethan was the future. The cycle was repeating, and I had allowed myself to hope it would not. As I gripped the steering wheel that night, my knuckles white, I felt the weight of years pressing down on me. I had been gaslit into believing that maybe if I were kinder, quieter, easier, they would love me. Maya had been trying the same strategy baking cookies, showing them how to use technology, offering her help at family dinners. She thought effort could earn affection. But my parents were consistent in one thing: they noticed only the boy. My daughter was invisible because she was not Daniel's son. In that moment, the past and present fused into one long betrayal. It was no longer just about a cake or a party. It was about decades of favoritism, of gendered dismissal, of being told without words that girls did not matter. I had endured it. I would not let Maya endure it too. I spent the weekend in a fog, moving through the house like a ghost, folding laundry washing dishes, staring out the window until the glass blurred. Maya did not complain. She did not cry. She simply withdrew into herself, carrying her books to her room and studying for classes that were already over. Marcus hovered, wanting to say something, but knowing I needed silence to find my own footing. On Sunday night, he slid a mug of tea across the table to me and said, "You cannot let them keep doing this." His voice was steady, not angry, just sure. That was when I remembered the deed. The house my parents lived in had once belonged to my grandmother. When she died, she had left it to my mother, to Daniel, and to me. 3 names on paper, 3 legal owners. I was only 4 at the time, and I had never thought much of it. My parents always dismissed it as a technicality, but it was not a technicality now. It was leverage. Marcus reminded me that my share was real. He said they think they can erase Maya with frosting and applause. Show them what cannot be erased. I thought of Rachel, my old friend from college who had become a lawyer. I called her the next morning and explained everything, my words tumbling out too fast, my voice cracking at the edges. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said calmly, "You have power here, Laura. They expect you to cry, to beg, to forgive. Do something they cannot dismiss. Put it in writing. Make it official." I met her in her office the next day, the smell of coffee and paper thick in the air. She drafted the letter with surgical precision. It was only a few sentences long, but it carried the weight of decades. I intend to sell my 1/3 share of the property located at Willow Lane. Non-negotiable. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no emotion. Just fact. Just consequence. I signed it with a hand that no longer shook. When I left her office, the paper was folded neatly into an envelope, plain and white, no return address. I did not trust the mail. I drove across town and slid it into my parents' mailbox myself. My heart hammered as I walked back to the car, but it was not fear. It was clarity. 3 days after the party, it was my turn to deliver the shock. The first call came from Heather, my younger sister. She was crying so hard I thought someone had died. "Did you really do this?" she sobbed. "Did you really say you are selling your share of the house?" I said yes. She wailed, "You are destroying her," meaning our mother. I replied evenly, "No." She destroyed herself. "I am just making it official." She hung up on me. Hours later, my phone rang again. Diane this time. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "I am going to pretend I misread this," she said. "You are going to tell me it was a mistake." I let the silence stretch until it broke her composure. "You are really going to sell your share of the house?" "Yes," I said. "Our home," she insisted. "No," I corrected. "My share of Grandma's home." Her breath caught. "That is vindictive." "No," I said. "This is overdue." She tried again, her voice sharpening. "You are doing this because of that stupid party. I am doing this because my daughter's future will not be tied to a house full of photographs of someone else's child." She laughed, then bitter and sharp. "So it is about Maya. Everything I do is about Maya." Her voice dropped. "You are going to make us homeless." "No," I said. "You can buy me out. You can get a mortgage. You can sell your car. Call Daniel. You have options." She was silent for a long moment, then hissed, "You want to be careful. You do not want to burn every bridge." I smiled, though she could not see it. pretty sure you took care of that with a cake and a banner." Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I felt something I had never associated with my parents: power. For a week, the phone rang almost every night. Sometimes it was Heather begging me to reconsider. Sometimes it was Daniel demanding to know why I would jeopardize the family. But most of the time, it was silence. Diane's number would flash on the screen again and again. I let it ring. I let it roll into voicemail. Marcus told me to block her, but I wanted to see how far she would go. It was not until 2 weeks later that I realized she had changed tactics. One evening, Maya came home from dance class. She set her bag down gently on the floor, her shoulders too straight, her face too calm. I knew that look. I asked what happened. She said quietly, "They were waiting for me." Who, I asked. She met my eyes. Grandma and Grandpa. My blood ran cold. She told me they had been standing on the sidewalk outside the studio pretending to be out for a casual walk, waving to her like friendly neighbors. They had not shown that kind of interest in her in 18 years, but suddenly they knew her schedule, her routine, her route home. She said they had been overly nice at first, too nice like actors in a bad play. Then the lines began. "You are really going to let your mother do this to us?" Diane asked. "She is making us homeless, sweetie. Talk to her. You are the only one she listens to." Maya told me she did not answer. She kept her face blank, her arms crossed. Charles leaned in and said, "You could stop this. One word from you and she will listen. Do you really want that on your conscience?" Maya told them no. No drama, no shouting, just a flat no. That was when Diane's face changed. She dropped the smile and leaned close enough for Maya to smell the coffee on her breath. "Choices have consequences," she said coldly. Maya walked away. She did not run, she did not cry. She simply turned her back and left them standing on the sidewalk. But when she told me the story later, I saw her hands tremble. They had tried to make her responsible for their downfall. They had tried to turn my daughter into their messenger, their pawn, their guilt-ridden middleman. It was not enough to belittle me. Now they wanted to infect her with the same poison, the same gaslighting, the same burden of being too responsible, too sensitive, too guilty. I felt something break inside me. I had always known my parents were manipulative, but ambushing a teenager outside her dance class was a new low. It was deliberate, it was cruel, and it was dangerous. I called Rachel the next morning and told her everything. She listened carefully and said, "They are escalating. Expect worse. Expect something you cannot ignore." She was right. A storm was coming, and it would not stop at whispered threats on sidewalks. The envelope came on a Wednesday afternoon, tucked between bills and grocery coupons. At first glance, it looked official, stamped with the university's crest. I tore it open at the kitchen counter, expecting routine paperwork, maybe financial aid forms. Instead, my eyes locked on the words immediately. "Your admission is currently under review due to a report of academic dishonesty." My stomach dropped. I read the letter twice, then a third time, hoping I had misread. They were investigating Maya for plagiarism. My Maya. The girl who stayed up until midnight double-checking her citations, the one who scolded her classmates for copying homework, the one whose pride was her integrity. I felt the blood drain from my face. Marcus walked in, saw me clutching the paper, and asked what happened. I handed it to him wordlessly. His jaw tightened as he read. Maya came into the room, then, humming softly, carrying her notebook. I had to sit her down and show her the letter. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked from me to Marcus, then back at the paper, her eyes wide. "I did not do this," she whispered. "I know," I said fiercely. "I know you did not. But someone wants them to think you did." Rachel came over that evening. She spread the letter across the table, scanning every line. "Anonymous report," she said. "That is the phrase, which means they will not tell us who sent it." I stared at her. "Do you think it was them?" She did not answer immediately. She looked at me with pity. Who else would benefit? That night I could not sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow on the wall looked like accusation. I kept hearing Diane's voice in my head. Choices have consequences. The next morning, Maya's counselor called. She had received a copy of the letter. She was sympathetic but firm. "The university takes all reports seriously," she said. Until the matter is cleared, Maya's scholarship would be on hold. I hung up, shaking. They had not just humiliated her at a party, they were trying to strip her of her future to stain her name in a way that would follow her for years. I imagined Diane at her kitchen table smirking as she sealed an envelope, Charles nodding beside her, convinced this was strategy. It was worse than cruelty. It was sabotage. Maya tried to stay calm. She said she would email her teachers, gather her essays, show them her drafts. She was determined to fight, but I could see the way her hands trembled when she typed. I could hear the crack in her voice when she said she was fine. She was 18, on the cusp of everything, and they were trying to crush her before she could even begin. Rachel leaned across the table and said quietly, "If this is them, you need proof. Do not let them hide behind anonymity." Her words lit something in me. For the first time, I did not feel powerless. I felt focused. I would find proof. I would expose them. And when I did, they would never be able to call Maya invisible again. Rachel warned me that anonymous accusations only stayed anonymous if nobody dug deeper. Universities protected whistleblowers, but paper trails had a way of revealing themselves. I began with the postmark on the envelope. It was stamped from the very same town where my parents lived. Not proof, but a thread. Rachel suggested requesting a copy of the report itself, which universities were required to keep on file. I called the admissions office pretending to need clarification for Maya's appeal. After several transfers and polite holds, a clerk read from the file. The report had claimed that Maya's essays contained language far too advanced for a high school senior and phrases suspiciously identical to online sources. The clerk also mentioned something else without thinking the report had been handwritten and mailed, not digital. My heart pounded. Handwriting. I knew that script. For years, Diane had left sticky notes on my mirror, on my refrigerator, on my desk. Buy milk. Call your brother. Bring dessert. Always the same curling loop in her letters, the same sharp downward flick at the end of her Ys. I asked the clerk if a copy could be made available for Maya's defense. He hesitated, but finally agreed to fax it to Rachel's office. That evening, we stood over the paper as the words scrolled across grainy but legible. Rachel laid one of Diane's old birthday cards next to it. The match was undeniable. Same loops, same flicks, same slant of the pen. Rachel nodded slowly. "This is it. You have your smoking gun." I felt equal parts triumph and rage. My own mother had tried to ruin her granddaughter with her own pen. Rachel leaned back in her chair. "You cannot just scream this at them," she cautioned. "You need to choose the moment. A confrontation without strategy is just noise. Choose when they cannot dismiss you, when they cannot twist the story." I thought of Thanksgiving, just weeks away. The one holiday when everyone would be present, when every cousin and uncle and aunt would gather around the long table. The one day my parents always demanded a perfect performance of family unity. That would be the stage. But before the holiday came a rehearsal of sorts. I drove to their house unannounced one evening. Diane opened the door, her face tight with surprise. "Laura," she said coolly. I stepped past her into the foyer and held out the faxed report. "Recognize this?" She blinked, her lips parting. Then she recovered. "I have no idea what that is." My voice was low and steady. "It is your handwriting." She laughed, brittle and sharp. "That is ridiculous." I pulled out the birthday card Rachel had given me for comparison. Same loops, same flicks, same slant. Diane's eyes darted to the paper and then back to me. For the first time in years, I saw something like fear flash across her face. Charles entered, then asking what was going on. I turned to him and said, "Your wife tried to destroy Maya's admission." He frowned, confused, then angry. Diane snapped. "She is making things up again, just like always." But her voice wavered. I folded the papers calmly and slid them back into my bag. "Save it for Thanksgiving," I told her. Then I walked out. Behind me, I heard Charles asking what she had done, and her voice rising in protest. For once, the cracks were showing. For once, they were not united in their gaslighting. And for the first time, I felt not just defensive, but powerful, carrying their guilt like a torch. I was ready to drop into the middle of their carefully staged holiday performance. Thanksgiving arrived with the usual crisp bite in the air, the sky streaked with pale November light. Marcus drove, while Maya sat silently beside me, her hands folded tight in her lap. The car was heavy with unspoken tension. Rachel had told me this was the moment. I carried the folder in my bag, the letter and the birthday card tucked neatly inside. My parents' house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon when we walked in, as if nothing had happened, as if years of cruelty could be baked over. Diane greeted guests with air kisses. Charles clapped Daniel on the back, and Ethan darted between legs, already the star of the show. I saw the banner stretched across the dining room wall. Family first, always. The hypocrisy nearly made me laugh. We took our seats at the long table, cousins' chattering, glasses clinking. Diane gave a little speech about gratitude, her voice smooth and practiced. She talked about tradition, about the family name, about the importance of supporting one another. My jaw clenched. When she finished, I rose to my feet. Chairs scraped as people turned to look at me. I said, "I want to add something." Diane's smile froze. Charles frowned. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. I pulled the papers from my bag and laid them on the tablecloth. "This," I said, "is a copy of an anonymous report sent to Maya's university accusing her of plagiarism." A gasp rippled around the table. Maya stared at her plate. I held up the card, and "This is a birthday card my mother wrote to me last year. Look at the handwriting. Same loops, same flicks, same slant." The room went still. Diane's face drained of color. She stammered, "That is absurd." I pointed at the page. "This is your hand. You tried to ruin your granddaughter's future." Charles shifted in his chair, his eyes narrowing at her. Daniel barked a laugh. "Are you serious? You are accusing Mom of forging a letter." I looked at him steadily. "I am not accusing. I am proving." Rachel had coached me well. My voice stayed calm, my words clipped. I said, "The admissions office faxed me this copy. They confirmed it was handwritten. I compared it myself. If anyone doubts, I am prepared to hire a handwriting analyst." Several cousins leaned forward, squinting at the papers. One aunt whispered, "It looks identical." Another uncle muttered, "This is too far." Diane pushed back her chair, her voice rising. "She is lying. She has always been jealous, always tried to turn people against me." But her voice cracked. The performance faltered. Charles slammed his hand on the table. "Enough," he barked. "Did you do this, Diane?" She froze. Her mouth opened closed. Finally, she whispered, "I just wanted to protect us." The room erupted. Gasps, accusations, murmurs. "Protect us," I repeated, "by destroying your granddaughter." Maya looked up, then her eyes wet but clear. She said, "You never saw me, did you?" "Not once." Diane's face crumpled. She reached out, but Maya pulled back. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and said, "This family has made it clear what it values. But Maya and I will not be invisible anymore." Then I sat down. Conversation faltered through the rest of dinner, forced laughter and stiff smiles, unable to erase the crack that had split the family wide open. The performance was ruined. The mask had slipped, and for the first time they could not deny what they had done. The fallout began before the leftovers were even packed away. Within days, cousins who had witnessed the scene at Thanksgiving started calling me privately. Some were shaken, some furious, some embarrassed they had stayed silent for so long. Word spread through the extended family like wildfire. What had been whispered in kitchens for years was now undeniable. Diane had tried to sabotage her own granddaughter, and I had laid the proof bare. Calls that once came daily from my parents stopped. Instead, they went out to others scrambling to contain the story, painting me as hysterical, exaggerating, ungrateful. But this time, nobody believed them. Too many had seen the handwriting with their own eyes. Too many had heard Diane stammer, had heard her confess she only wanted to protect us. Their credibility was gone. The mask had slipped too far. 2 weeks later, the attorney handling the house sale called me. "Your parents are desperate," he said bluntly. "They want to buy back your share at a discount, hoping you will relent." I told him no. Market price or nothing. When the papers were signed and the check cleared, I deposited the money directly into Maya's college fund. Watching the numbers tick upward felt like air filling my lungs after years underwater. Diane and Charles moved out of the old house shortly after. They downsized to a small rental across town, no longer the proud hosts of sprawling holiday dinners. Daniel stopped returning their calls as often. Even he could not spin the humiliation they had brought on themselves. In the neighborhood where reputation mattered, whispers followed them. She forged a letter, people said. She tried to ruin her granddaughter. Invitations dried up. Church acquaintances offered polite smiles but turned away in the grocery aisle. Diane, once the matriarch who relished control, found herself isolated. Charles grew bitter, snapping at her in public. I heard from a cousin that one evening during a community meeting he shouted, "You destroyed us in front of a dozen people." Meanwhile, Maya's appeal to the university succeeded. She presented her drafts, her teachers vouched for her, and the investigation was closed. Her scholarship was reinstated. She received an official letter apologizing for the stress caused. I framed it and placed it above her desk, a daily reminder that truth, when fought for, could prevail. Maya carried herself differently after that, taller, stronger. She knew the cost of speaking up, but she also knew the power of evidence of refusing to be erased. Rachel congratulated us, saying few families managed to break cycles this entrenched. Marcus and I began talking about moving farther away, starting new traditions. For the first time in years, I felt not only relief, but something sharper, something cleaner. Revenge. Not the reckless kind that scorched earth for no reason, but the measured kind that cut precisely where it hurt most reputation control pride. My parents had wanted to make Maya invisible. Instead, they had made themselves untouchable in the worst way. And I had made sure of it. Months have passed since that Thanksgiving confrontation, and the silence from my parents has settled into something permanent. The phone that once rang with their demands and criticisms now stays quiet. At first, the absence felt strange, almost hollow, but then I realized it was peace. For years, I had mistaken constant criticism for connection. Without it, our home feels lighter. Maya is thriving in her first semester at university. She sends me photos of her campus, her dorm room covered with fairy lights, the stack of textbooks she devours with determination. She calls late at night, exhausted but exhilarated, telling me about new friends who respect her brilliance rather than diminish it. Each time I hear her laugh, I know the fight was worth every ounce of energy. Rachel remains our steady ally, reminding me that breaking cycles is not about a single dramatic victory, but about daily choices to protect dignity. She told me once that families who cling to favoritism rarely change, they only double down. By cutting ties, I did not abandon tradition. I built a new one. Marcus and I now host small dinners of our own, inviting friends who celebrate Maya genuinely, who see her achievements without jealousy. There is no banner on the wall, no forced speeches, only real gratitude. Sometimes I hear rumors of my parents, how Diane has grown withdrawn, how Charles mutters in bitterness about betrayal. I do not rejoice in their decline, but I also do not mourn it. Actions carry consequences. They chose control and cruelty. I chose my daughter, and that choice gave us freedom. The moral is simple. Family is not defined by blood, but by the love and respect we give each other. For anyone listening who has been dismissed, erased, or told, "You do not matter because of your gender or because you refused to obey," know this: you are not invisible. Stand your ground. Gather your evidence. Protect your own. Because sometimes the most radical revenge is to thrive where they swore you could not. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you found strength in it, let me know where you are listening from and share your own experiences of betrayal and resilience in the comments. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and join our community of stories where justice, however long delayed, always finds its way.